Yeah, I've got a few questions I absolutely have to ask you, or people will wonder what I even did with this time. One question I have to ask is about the rise of indie publishing, self-publishing. With the access now that everybody has to the entire world, I teach a class on the basics of self-publishing. I usually open with, if we wanted to, we would never want to, but if we wanted to, we could have a book available in every country in the world by the end of the class. We could do it that fast. What are the advantages for those thinking, should I go through the often wearying process of querying agents and getting rejected and experiencing a level of pain? Again, I can only think to maybe actors who are going out and auditioning for things and being rejected on a regular basis.
Yeah.
What are the arguments for why traditional publishing, especially for middle grade and young adult, is still the way to go?
Well, I think first and foremost, it really depends on what you want as a writer, right? So traditional publishing and self-publishing offer different things to the writer. And I think it really depends on what are you trying to pursue. This is what I'll say traditional publishing can offer. First of all is distribution to physical bookstores in a really efficient way. So one of the things I sometimes have heard folks say about self-publishing their book is that I only want, the publisher's not really going to do anything because I can just put it on Amazon. And the thing that, publishers do have are sales reps, and they're in constant communication with, Barnes and Noble and Powell's Books and Books of Wonder, little stores, big stores, Target, and they're working to try and get your book into those stores. Sometimes for certain books, you want them to work a little harder to do that. However, that is their job and that's what they do. So, being able to have your book come out on the same day and be on bookshelves in all these different stores across the country is something that a publisher can do. And I think that's pretty cool. The other thing is having editorial expertise that is primarily geared toward making your book accessible to readers. And I think that that's really a particular thing and invaluable. And that's something that agents and editors offer more so than, say, a critique group or a writing professor. So my experience was I was an English major. I had the world's most amazing writing professor, Kit Reed, who's now sadly no longer with us. And she taught me so much about writing. And her brain was 100% writer brain. It was the most writer brain I've ever met. And it was really, really fantastic. But it only got me halfway to where I needed to be. It was working with Scott Trammell and him helping me understand what writing for an audience means, and writing, sort of scene by scene to convey different ideas, to be thinking about, trends and genre and what's going to appeal to my reader. He was pure agent brain, or he was like agent brain infected with some writing brain. That really it felt like the other half of the puzzle to me as a writer. And I think that having that kind of editorial feedback is really valuable to writers who may have so far only gotten critiqued by other writers or by folks in a more academic setting. So I think that's valuable. It can be definitely said that I've heard said, well, publishers don't really do a lot of marketing and publicity. And I think that that's a completely different conversation. Publishers do a ton of marketing and publicity. I think because there are so many titles on their list, sometimes authors feel correctly that their book didn't get as much attention as, say, someone else's. And that's a bummer. So getting a publishing deal is by no means a guarantee that you're going to get a huge publicity push from your publisher. But if you do have them behind you, if it is, a title that they're really getting behind, that kind of stuff can be invaluable, right?
Now, on the back of that, if I'm a really savvy writer and I came to John Cusick to get the great representation that I need, what do you do up front to ensure that publicity is going to be there for my book?
Sure. So agents aren't publicists. But what I do is I work to make sure that the publisher is doing the most they possibly can and that nothing slips through the cracks. So publicizing a book is a big job. And unlike your relationship with your editor, there's going to be a whole team of people who are working on your book there. So you're going to have, say, your editor, and then someone who's, in charge of publicity, There might be, excuse me, a separate person for school and library marketing. There might be a person just for marketing, ad sales. So there can be all these different players in the room when we're talking about just publicizing your book, right? So because of that, stuff can slip through the cracks, and it can be great to have an agent on side to kind of keep track of it all. So for instance, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be having a phone call with an author to discuss her publicity plan. That publicity plan is looking pretty good, but there are gaps in it. There are things there are questions that I need answers to as an agent. So on a publicity plan, it might say, a video featuring your title that's going to appear on, these websites, or that will appear online. So I would want some more specific information there. Like when you say a video that features this title, is this a book? Is this a video about this book? Or is it a video about the publisher, and this book is going to kind of fly by the screen at some point, right? Those are important details, right? That make
2-second cameo and then back to the publisher.
Exactly. I'm making sure that I'm answering those questions with the author and the publisher. I'm making sure that, let's say the author promised a particular bookseller or writer friend who might blurb the book a copy of the book. I've had it happen that the author says, okay, yeah, I'll get you a copy of the book. They write to the publisher says, absolutely, we'll send a copy out. 6 months later, the copy never went anywhere. It happens. Mistakes happen. It's not the end of the world, but it helps to have someone there to say hey, did that go out? Just to kind of, as a check. And you know what? By the same token, I appreciate having those checks too. I today had one of my authors text me to be like, oh, hey, John, this email you just sent me, I think you're wrong about X. And she was totally right. And I'm glad that she was there. I'm happy to say that doesn't happen very often, but, I'm human too. So I think having that person to sort of be the stage manager a little bit of your career is really important. And I think that's one of the ways in which agents help with publicity. Beyond that, when I'm negotiating a deal, especially a competitive one, we might talk ahead of time about what the pub plan is for the book, what kind of publicity the publisher envisions. And also, I'm there to help the author figure out how to work with their publisher on publicity. A lot of authors don't know what their role should be in publicizing their own book. Some writers think, they come to it feeling like, okay, well, the publisher is going to publicize the book. I'm just going to sit back and wait for them to tell me what to do. That's not a good idea. You want to take a much more proactive role for a number of reasons.
So 30 days later, oh, is that the money truck? Oh, excellent. I was waiting for it.
Right, exactly.